Welcome, everyone, to this morning and this opportunity to be together with people who aspire to live widely and love well. In our tradition, we try to balance reason and belief, intellect and intuition. We are committed to spiritual and ethical values, as outlined in our 8 principles, and we generally focus on this lifetime and this world. We welcome all to this caring community, a place where strangers become friends and where we stand with each other to be the change we hope to see in ourselves and in our society. With that in mind, we humbly acknowledge that we meet on the ancestral territories of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize how fortunate we are to share this beautiful part of the world. We gather on Sunday mornings pretty much to learn about being human. And these days, especially, it seems being human can be a very complex business. And we know we don't have all the answers to life's questions. But our mission is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. And that mission is front and center today. I'm Sue Forbes, and I'll be your service associate. And I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Sanford Osler. Sanford was instrumental in developing our mission and purpose, so he's been thinking about living with purpose for a long time, and he has many insights to share. Sanford grew up in Winnipeg, my hometown, makes him special, and lived and worked in Toronto for 25 years. In '93, he moved to North Van with his wife, Betty Ann, who's with us today too, and their children, Matthew and Lynn. And their kids now live in New Westminster, and they each have 2 children of their own, all boys, ranging in age from 2 to 6. As you can imagine, the boys keep their parents and Sanford and Betty Ann very engaged. Now, many years ago, Sanford felt a spiritual void in his life, and so he went church shopping, and he visited about a dozen congregations in the area. And lucky for us, he chose NSUC, and he's been a member for over 20 years. He's been involved in many capacities and currently serves as the chair of our governance committee. Sanford has an MA in economics from UBC, and he's worked and volunteered for a variety of organizations, some of which he'll tell you about. He now enjoys time with his grandkids and traveling with Betty Ann, and he's also active with skiing, biking, and canoeing. And you might remember that he's also the author of a book titled Canoe Crossings, Understanding the Craft that helped shape British Columbia. And he spoke to us once on that very topic. It's a real interest of his. So Sanford and I both welcome you all to this community of friendly and, I hope, curious people. If you're a newcomer, please stay for coffee afterwards. We'd love to get to know you.
I will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? When injustice raises up its fist, fights to stop us in our tracks, we will rise, and as one resist, fear not sorrow, nor turn us back. We will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? When pain and hatred churn up angry noise and try to shut down our freedom song, we will rise in one joyful voice, loud and Will you stand with me? When broken hearts come knocking at our doors, lost and hungry and so alone, we will reach as we have reached before, for there is no stranger in this our home. I will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me?
Thank you. And in this community of care, we hold and witness one another through the seasons of our lives. May our sanctuary hold whatever is on your heart today. There is always room among us for joy and sorrow, celebration and mourning, and everything in between. And I have to confess, I did not grab the sheet from the foyer this morning. Is there anybody that wrote something in there that they'd like me to announce? And if not, we just want to say for that which remains in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, we light a candle of hope and caring. And Bruce Grusin is now going to come up and introduce our first ever Candle of Universal Wonder in honor of tomorrow's big event. And I'm sure you can all say what that is.
Good morning, everyone. So the big event, as you all know, is the Super Bowl. Nature's Super Bowl is happening tomorrow. It's a solar eclipse. I don't know if anyone is as excited about this as I am. I've spoken about it at least twice from up here. It's a kind of a rare event. It happens only every few years. If you're very lucky, though, you find yourself in the so-called path of totality, where you get the full meal deal for a couple of minutes. And there are at least two people in this connected to this congregation who will be in the path of totality tomorrow. One of them is our daughter Maddie, who's in Montreal, and also Carrie's son Matt will be in Montreal for that. So it's going to be. People say their lives are changed from seeing this. So I'm going to read you a real quick little poem by Billy Collins, and it's about this very phenomenon. It's called As If to Demonstrate an Eclipse. Okay. I pick an orange from a wicker basket and place it on the table to represent the sun. Then down at the other end, a blue and white marble becomes the earth. And nearby, I lay the little moon of an aspirin. I get a glass from a cabinet, open a bottle of wine, and then I sit in a ladder-back chair, a benevolent God presiding over a miniature creation myth. And I begin to sing a homemade canticle of thanks for this perfect little arrangement, for not making the earth too hot or cold, not making it spin too fast or slow, so that the grove of orange trees and the owl have become possible, not to mention the rolling wave, the play of clouds, geese in flight, and the Z of lightning on a dark lake. And then I fill my glass again and give thanks for the trout, the oak, and the yellow feather, singing the room full of shadows as sun and earth and moon circle one another in their impeccable orbits, and I get more and more cockeyed with gratitude.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Sanford.
Our opening words this morning are by Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist, speaking to students as reported in his 1992 book, Man's Search for Meaning. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do, and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live to see that in the long run, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think of it.
Please stay seated as we reflect on these words with this song. There's a purpose calling from my soul. You can join in with me. There's a purpose calling from my soul, and it's telling me what I can truly be. There's a purpose calling from my soul. There's a purpose tugging at my heart. There's a purpose tugging at my heart, and it's telling me what I can truly be. There's a purpose tugging at my heart. There's a purpose forming in my mind. There's a purpose forming in my mind, and it's telling me what I can truly be. There's a purpose forming in my mind.
Thank you, Allison, for that hymn, which certainly sets me up well for my reflection. Sue contacted me just before we were heading out for a trip to Mexico, asking if I'd like to do a sermon in the spring. I told her I'd think about it on vacation. The first book I had taken with me to read had just come out, and it was called Badass Retirement. Shatter the Retirement Myth. Live with more meaning, money, and adventure. Now, the picture and title may not impress you, but it triggered some very interesting comments and conversations at the beach. The author has a master's in psychology, a PhD in financial and retirement planning, and has worked with clients on this subject for over 25 years. And he had 5 basic elements to recommend for a badass retirement. First 3, I'm sure you've all heard before: good health, good finances, and good relationships. The 4th one was live boldly, get out of your comfort zone, maybe give a sermon at your church. The 5th one, which was really the heart of the book, was to have meaning and purpose in retirement. Because this is the stage in your life when you have time, you don't have a boss, and hopefully you're not financially driven. So you have an opportunity to answer the question, why are you here? And then ideally, the answer involves having an impact beyond yourself. And he quotes various scientific studies to suggest that having a sense of purpose has mental and physical benefits, an improved quality of life, and living longer. He believes having such a purpose can lead to a more fulfilling, rewarding, and happier life. So Sue, maybe I can ask you whether you've had any experience in developing or trying to live a life purpose.
I need my prop here. And as it just happens, I have thought a lot about my purpose, and it's been mostly a positive thing in my life. And here's a quick story about it. In 2000, so a long time ago, Barry and I went to a seminar that presented a lot of great ideas for both business and personal development. And we were asked to fill out this form, a personal action summary that says, translate the key ideas from the speaker into actions you want to take into your business life primarily, but also your personal life. And it's a fluke that I found this in my files 24 years later, because it wasn't even labeled. It was just in an empty file that I picked up. I think Carl Jung would call that synchronicity, don't you think? And there's more synchronicity here too, because on this form, and this is the original, the first thing I wrote down was number 1, read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, which is what the book that Sanford quoted from this morning. And the second thing, it was a whole list of other books that I wanted to read, starting with Jack Kornfield's The Wise Heart. It's a beautiful book about Buddhist psychology. It's just wonderful. I have 2 copies, one at the island and one here in the city. And the third one was Decide Life Purpose. And until I found this last week, I'd totally forgotten that this is what spurred me on to look at my purpose. So the idea was on my mind when Barry and I, and Barry's business partner, Erky, and his wife planned a trip to Mexico. Mexico must be a good place for thinking about these things. But a month before we were to go, Barry had a serious problem. Barry and Erky had a serious problem erupt in their business. And so we had to cancel. And at the time, I worked at one of the port terminals down there where the big yellow sulfur piles are. And it was a stressful job because the managers and the longshoremen were often at odds. And we were also building a huge new facility with the usual delays and cost overruns. Luckily, they weren't as bad as our new water treatment plant. Have you read about those? Holy smokes, there's a problem. Anyway, I was worn out, so I decided to go alone to Mexico. I just wanted time to think and contemplate. So I went to the library, got my stack of books from the list, and I also found a set of tapes on how to find your life's purpose. It was like a mini course with lots of journaling exercises, perfect for my week of solitary bliss. So I packed my books and tapes, a sun hat, some fresh underwear, and not much else. And Barry, ever so kind as he is, picked me up from my office at work, and we headed to the airport. And on the way, he said, I have a great surprise. Look in the back seat. So I turn around and look, and there in the back seat is his sun hat and his suitcase. And he says, Eric says, I can handle things at the office, so I'm coming to Mexico with you. Well, I was surprised. And not entirely happy. Because Barry's idea of a holiday is anything but contemplative. So I said, trying hard not to be too mean, I said, well, okay, you can come, but remember, this is my holiday, and I'm not going to get caught in your vortex of busyness. We had a wonderful week. I spent the days reading, journaling, developing my purpose, and the strategies that would help me fulfill it. It was so much fun. And Barry was happy too, because he was exhausted from his business troubles. He spent most of his days sleeping in a hammock. And there just happened to be a cooler of free beer right next to him. And so he'd come alive pretty much only when he had to go to the bathroom. Which was often because of all the beer being so handy. But each day we'd end at 4 o'clock, and then we'd go for a swim in the ocean and walk on the beach and eat in a tiny little restaurant in this little village where we were, and enjoyed a relaxing evening. It was a fabulous week for both of us. And I came home with my purpose and my personalized strategies to get me there. I'll tell you only my purpose here, but there was more to it than this. Sounds pretty simple now, even in my mind. My purpose is to transform my love of learning into actions that creatively contribute to the well-being of people I care about, within, among, and beyond. And so that includes a lot of people. And for the most part, my purpose has served me well, especially in my family life and volunteer activities. My children get kind of tired of all the interesting things I'm sending them to say, you should have a look at this, you guys, it's important. But I have to be careful, though, that I don't use it as a cudgel for myself, expecting it to result in some huge accomplishment that I can point to. I need to remember Viktor Frankl's words. Don't aim at success. The more you make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. Rather, listen to what your conscience commands of you and carry it out to the best of your knowledge and abilities. So that's what I strive for, to transform my love of learning into actions that creatively contribute to the well-being of people I care about. And that includes all of you here this morning in this community of lifelong learners.
I sing this song in gratitude to Sue and her friendship and awareness of that journey, and also in gratitude to all of you and awareness of your journeys, which are continuing. A leap of faith. I am living in time. It's a rhythm I know. More and more I think life is all balance and hope. 'Cause it's not black or white, it's any shade of my choice, coming fully alive as I give it my voice. Oh, it is time I will live out loud and open my eyes to the great divide. I'm walking my path, I'm finding my way, and every step's a leap of faith. Every story's a thread in the weave that vows. I don't know what's ahead, but I'm standing here now. There are moments I fly, there are days when I weep. Sometimes I close my eyes and remember to breathe. Oh, it is time I will live out loud and open my eyes to the great divide. I'm walking my path, I'm finding my way, and every step's a leap of faith. I walk on a fluid road, ever changing where it goes. I wrestle my fear and trusting my heart that strength will appear, oh, growing there in the dark. Oh, it is time I will live out loud and open my eyes to the great divide. I'm walking my path, finding my way, and every step's a leap of faith.
Thank you, Sue and Allison. Back in February, Reverend Barbara Gilday spoke here on some key purpose-related questions to ask yourself. And you probably first hear these questions as a child, but she believed they were relevant as adults too. And the first one was, who do you think you are? That's the child version. The adult version is more, who do you think you are? So I developed my purpose in life in my early 20s. And it was because my parents were encouraging me to go to law school, and I perceived lawyers worked for their clients' best interests, and I wanted to work for society's best interests, and I didn't think they were always aligned. So that became my purpose, my draft working purpose, is to improve society's well-being. So my first job, beyond summer work, was in a Toronto-based environmental group in the early 70s. It was a very exciting time because I was dealing with provincial and national energy-related issues, and I had meetings in Ottawa with MPs like Flora MacDonald and Tommy Douglas, and I'd be on the national CBC talking about the issues, programs like This Country in the Morning and Viewpoint. And so I was an activist seeking change and was being heard. And so it helped me to clarify my purpose to be a change agent to improve society's well-being. So 50 years has gone by with periodic review of that purpose statement, but no real basic change to it. I've added dimensions as my roles change, dimensions to cover my role as a spouse and as a parent, but the core professional purpose remained. Then 2021 came along. It was pandemic winter. We weren't able to travel. What would I do? Well, I decided to write a memoir and focus on the degree to which I'd been able to achieve my mission, my purpose. And it was a great opportunity, actually, because I could phone people up that I hadn't talked to, sometimes in decades, people I'd worked with, and ask them about what did they see my contribution to our mutual work to have been, and also look for third-party comments on my work. And so this helped me address Barbara's second question, which was, what have you done? Okay. So my findings. Well, with the exception of a 1-2-year period, I believe I worked or volunteered in purpose-related areas over those 50 years. And I did it as a change agent, either as an outsider, an activist, a student, an author, a citizen, where I was more focused on raising awareness about an issue, or as an insider, a frontline worker, a manager, a board member, or board chair. And those tended to be more to implement ideas. And I stayed focused on the societal well-being aspect, but I broadened from environmental well-being to physical, financial, community, and spiritual well-being. And I was generally pleased with what I'd been able to achieve. It really caused me to think about things, and by and large, I was quite pleased. And I think that purpose from the 20s gave me direction, resilience to keep going when obstacles arose, meaning, and satisfaction, and that I had made a difference. So let me give you 2 recent volunteer phase, retirement phase examples of the insider and outsider role. I joined the board in 2009 of the North Vancouver Museum and Archives Commission and was vice chair or chair for the next 7 years that I was on the board. And I volunteered for that because I think North Vancouver has a very interesting history. And I wanted to help tell that history, that story, and to tell the whole story, not just a certain perspective on the story. And during my 7 years, we seriously studied 3 new sites to replace our rather decrepit building we were in before we got a new location. And that's the new location. I hope some of you recognize that. It's basically the foot of Lonsdale, just west of the foot of Lonsdale on Esplanade, the Museum of North Vancouver, shortened to MANOVA, if you can figure out the acronym. And during those 7 years, I, of course, did lots of reading and research about the role of a museum. And I read the Truth and Reconciliation report when it came out. And buried in page 251 was a paragraph that said, local museums had a critical role to play to contribute to education for reconciliation. And I promoted that concept far and wide. I helped choose consultants that understood it, and I helped work with First Nations to open up lines of communications. So I was very pleased when, after the museum opened, it won the Canadian Museum Association's Outstanding Achievement Award for Social Impact because of the stories it told about the Indigenous history and the need for reconciliation. And interestingly enough, there's a new exhibit last month called Agents of Change, Chief Dan George's Legacy. So I hope if you haven't yet been there, you people will try it out. It's not your standard museum, and I hope you'll find it interesting. An honorable mention from the Museum Association went to the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, this beautiful building in Winnipeg. It's a national museum, and its purpose is to help people understand human rights, give examples of their violation, and tell about the people that fought for restoration of those rights. And it's the first one in the world focused on human rights. So in 2018, I was in Winnipeg on a family matter, and I visited the museum and took a guided tour. And there was a special exhibit on Viola Desmond, the black woman who was jailed and fined for sitting in a whites-only section of a cinema in Nova Scotia in 1946. And she's on our $10 bill now. And I asked the tour guide, do you have anything on Dick Patrick? And she said, no, I've never even heard of him. Check with the front desk. Well, the front desk hadn't heard of them either and couldn't find anything in the system about Dick Patrick, but gave me the name of a researcher to contact. So I called up the researcher. She had never heard of him either and knew nothing about him. And just for your information, because you probably haven't heard of him either, he was a First Nations man in Vanderhoof, BC, and in World War II, in 1944, he joined the army. He joined the army before 44, but in 44 he was, after D-Day, moving east through Europe and came to a bridge that was heavily defended by the Germans, and he singly captured over 50 German soldiers and officers and allowed his group to be able to proceed further east. And for that daring and effective move, he was awarded a medal by King George in Buckingham Palace in 1945, and he had a chance to talk to the king at some length. And he said, do you know, when I'm in the army, I'm treated relatively equally with all the other men that I'm serving with. But when I go home, I can't even get a restaurant. I can't even get a meal in the local restaurant. Well, the king said, that's not good. I will try and help. So perhaps encouraged by the king's comment, he went back to Vanderhoof, went into the restaurant, sat down, was told to leave, refused to leave, was arrested, and was sent to Ocala prison for 6 months for breaking the peace. Fortunately, he knew a white woman that was helping First Nations people who knew the Attorney General of BC, and when he heard about the story, he had Mr. Patrick released. But he went back to Vanderhoof in the next bus, and he did the same thing. And back to Ocala. 12 times he did this. And he spent a year in prison. So when I heard this story, and I heard it in a book I read, and it was only 3 pages in a 300 or 400 page book, but I was stunned by it. I'd never heard it, and there were so many aspects of it that were troubling. I talked to the author and I said, so is this getting any profile? Is the family promoting it, and he said, no, it's a dead story as far as he knew. Mr. Patrick has died, but he had an older sister that was still living. So I thought the story was as strong or stronger than the Viola Desmond story or the Rosa Parks story in the US. Similar, but even stronger in many ways. So I followed up after 6 months, and I was told by the researcher, no, actually, we haven't had a chance to look at it. We're very busy. So I was stunned, and so I wrote the CEO of the museum, and within an hour, I got a reply, an email reply saying, this is interesting on many levels. We need to and will share this story. So I was very, very pleased with that. And I did sort of monitor and keep tabs of what they were doing, and in fact, they did research and document the story, which allowed it to get picked up. It's now in the Canadian Encyclopedia. The CBC's had interviews with the sister, etc. But I was really pleased when the successor CEO in 2022, in a speech, said, our galleries are full of stories of strength and resilience in pursuit of human rights, and gave as examples Nelson Mandela, Viola Desmond, and Dick Patrick. So, very pleased that he's now getting the recognition he so deserved. So, the next phase of my reflections is to talk about, okay, how do you develop a purpose? You've heard how Sue and I did it, but you don't have to go to Mexico. But it's still not always easy to do. The Badass Retirement book has a whole chapter on it, and I've given a copy to the library if you want to have a look at that. If you Google the subject, there's all sorts of stuff that comes up, needless to say. There's many religious groups that encourage and facilitate followers to develop their life purpose. And some of them believe that they know what people's purpose should be. Last summer, we were on a boat that some of you may know, the Francis Barclay, goes from Port Alberni to Bamfield and back. And on the way back, we picked up a large group of First Nations children from a summer camp, and the counselors were all wearing shirts that talked about creating and living their purpose. So, of course, I asked them what that meant. And they said, well, what we do at the summer camp is help children find their purpose. And I said, oh, how do you do that? Well, we study the Bible, and they will learn from the Bible what their purpose should be. So now my question is there a role for this church, our congregation, to help people develop and live their life purpose? Well, as you all know, the mission of our church is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. And we welcome all to our caring community, foster spiritual growth free of dogma, and inspire actions in the service of life. Now, Sue and I were on the committee that drafted this and proposed it and got unanimous approval from the congregation. And we had decided in advance we wanted two parts to the mission statement. One that dealt with the why or the purpose of the organization, and then the other dealt more with the how and what we would do. And I hope you see that the first sentence really is a purpose sentence, why we exist. In fact, when we first wrote it, we said the purpose of North Shore Unitarian Church is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. But we concluded that was a little circular. We shouldn't have purpose in the sentence twice. So we replaced it with mission. But in my mind, the first sentence is really the purpose statement, and the second is the elements of meeting that purpose. And I hope you agree with me that helping people develop their purpose is very consistent with it, particularly the concept of fostering spiritual growth, free of dogma, and that helping people live with their purpose is very consistent with inspiring actions in the service of life. So I hope you'll forgive me for acting as a change agent, but it seems to me like helping people develop and live their purpose is a natural role for NSUC.
not just survive, though the road be long and the river wide, though the seasons change and the willows bend, though some dreams break, some others mend. We were born to give and born to take, to win and lose and to celebrate. We were born to know and born to muse, to unfold our hearts, take a chance and choose. We were born to love, though we feel the thorn when a ship sets sail, to return no more, though a door be closed, and we feel the pain, to chance it all and to love again. We were born to reach, to seek what's true, to surrender all, to make each day new. We were born to laugh and born to cry, to rejoice and grieve, just to be alive. We were born to hope and to know despair and to stand alone when there's no one there. We were born to trust and to understand that in every heart lies an outstretched hand. We were born to live, to be right and wrong, to be false and true, to be weak and strong. We were born to love, to break down the walls, and to know that life is to taste it all.
Many thanks to both of you, Sanford and Catherine. Such inspiring messages from you. And thanks also to all the people who help bring our services alive, and that includes our ushers, who I'll now call forward as I invite you into the spiritual practice of generosity. Our Sunday offerings, unless you indicate otherwise, go 100% to support community groups that our congregation particularly values. And this month, in keeping with deep concerns about plastics, our environmental action team has chosen Ocean Wise to receive our offerings. Ocean Wise grew out of the work of the Vancouver Aquarium and now has programs in place to research and address plastic pollution in our oceans, as well as to improve our marine habitats and protect our whales. Please give generously if you are able, and a reminder, use an envelope with your name on it to get a tax receipt. Announcements and invitations. First, I want to remind you to scroll down in your weekly e-bulletins. They're full of news, including Ruth Sherwood's new column called Mini Bios. And last week's was about Pavel Simoncic and Catherine Sang. And this week's is about our Diana Diaz, who's struggling with her voice these days, and we're missing her. So well done, Ruth. Thank you so much, as a must-read. Coffee will be upstairs after our service today. And again, newcomers, please mingle and ask anyone you meet about our tradition and our congregation. We pride ourselves on being a friendly bunch. Next weekend is going to be a very busy and special time for us. First, on Saturday, the clothing swap. $20 gets you in the door, and you can take home as many great finds as you like. And if Rebecca were here, I would get her to show you the leather boots that she got last time, and I'm very envious of them. So you never know what you're going to find. And many thanks to those who've worked so hard to create the swap. I know Jean and Stuart and Sasha, and there could be many others, but they come top of mind. And then after soup next Sunday, please join us for a town hall meeting with our board. They are going to present some preliminary thoughts on North Shore's future, and then gather input from all of you. And I promise it will be very interesting. Allison.
Thank you, Sue. We had a wonderful opportunity to be given a tour of the North Shore Women's Centre. This is a group of people representing the congregation have made a decision to really get to know this organization. We do on Sunday mornings give to 9 different charitable organizations, some for the environment, some focusing on the environment, and some focusing on social justice. But we felt we wanted a group where we could get to know people personally, where we could be involved personally, meet face to face, and start to develop a real relationship. A first step when we met with them, they said, we need food. They have a binder this big of people who need support, serving, feeding their families. And so that felt like a very manageable way that we could actually support this group on an ongoing basis. Yes, we can give money, but I think that every time we go shopping, if we just pick up one thing, which we can then bring on a Sunday morning, put in a box that will then get taken to the North Shore Women's Centre, it's a step towards physically doing something that really, really supports others. Do you feel that you might be able to, when you do your grocery shopping, pick up one item that's on this list, and then when you come to church on Sunday, drop it into a binder? Does anyone think they could do that? Well, look at this. Fantastic. Well done, everybody. Thank you so much. That's just tremendous. So it's a great start in a relationship with this wonderful organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Very quick teaser about next week's service. It's going to be about 2 very inspirational women. One of them you don't know about probably yet. She's the subject of my reflection. And the other one you know very well, someone who's celebrating a big round birthday, and we're going to, she's covering her face. We're going to acknowledge Sonia's 100th birthday next week. So please come.
Let's join together in singing Just As Long As I Have Breath, I Must Answer Yes to Life. Please rise. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If
closing words today. You've heard and sang some inspiring music and lyrics. You've heard about the theoretical benefits of having purpose. You've heard about the experience of Sue and I with creating and living a life purpose. Here's what some other people have said on the subject. Helen Keller: true happiness is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose. John F. Kennedy: efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. And Winston Churchill: it's not enough to have lived. We should be determined to live for something. So I ask you to consider, what is your life purpose?